What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi and Kenny Hyder. We're going to be talking through the Cognizant, and yeah, it's a not the strongest field in the world, and it's nice to have Kenny back here with me because we're going to try and dissect this thing and figure out what we like. I did attach like over here on the left. These are Sheets ownerships and Saber Sims ownership, and it's a very interesting way to play. I know a lot of people, a lot of top pros, and it didn't work last week, but left to help. They actually maxed their salary like in the 49.5, 49.7 range just to get off of anything because there's no real. You're probably not going to need to fill it out, especially in the lotteries. But I do think that there is I just like to lower the minimum, and I'm using min maxes a lot more in golf. So just before we get into it and welcome Kenny into here, I just want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing. So I'm going to enter my min-max exposures either way, but I'm going to use a combination. Look, I would say in general, Sheets' projections, especially when they're updated, and then golf, it doesn't matter quite as much, although it matters some because I think that there's still some players he's got projected that aren't, and he's got some family stuff to deal with, so he's out. But I will use the average of Sheets, Goldie, and Saber Sim. Sometimes I'll use Goldie, sometimes I'll use Sheets. But I like using this average button. It's one of the advantages of the true DFS users to differentiate yourself from other Saber Sim customers. And I like using Goldie and Sheets projections as I find they've been more accurate for golf historically than Saber Sims have, which doesn't mean Saber Sims hasn't been good, but just it's really hard to get the ownerships right in golf. And especially every time somebody's out, you don't really know how it's going to change the way that it's going to change the builds and whatnot. But anyway, this is where we are. This is what we have. Kenny, good to have you back. Any overall thoughts before we start going into the different tiers and whatnot?
Yeah, good to be back. I think, what you're saying is interesting about leaving money on the table. I did see a tweet like Sunday or Monday that whoever won the lotto last week did basically max out their salary, even though it wasn't the optimal, close to the optimal, but it was still a max thing. So I think, I think really you just shouldn't think about maybe you don't have to think about leaving money on the table. You don't have to think about not, Personally, I like to kind of start things leaving a lot of money on the table so I can always not have to worry about if guys cost more when I'm kind of editing by hand. But yeah, it should be an interesting week. I remember pretty vividly last year after the end of the Florida swing tweeting out, please remind me not to play any of the Florida swing next year. So I'm a little hesitant because I remember last year I had a pretty good start to the season and then Florida kind of ruined me. But it's should be an interesting week. I think, even being a weaker field this week, there are a lot of storylines going on, guys trying to get status, guys trying to, get rankings and points to get into majors and stuff like that as we come into, master season coming up and all that kind of stuff. So, kind of interesting mix of, a few studs and guys, but a lot of young talent that, is now going to be coming to, the Florida golf courses, which are obviously very different than the California style golf that we've been playing recently. So, good week to mix things up, I think.
Yeah, and I was looking at the weather, and I don't think that there seems to be a massive edge. There always ends up being a little bit of an edge for one. It's just the way that it goes. But you're going to have typical Florida weather. It doesn't seem to be too windy in the first couple of days. So at least you don't have to worry, don't have to worry. I actually kind of like those because it increases variance, and there's a lot of ways you can try and do things a little differently. But for this, I don't think it's going to factor in all that much. And one of the biggest thing that stands out and why I think that it's okay if you do leave money on the table is that we really don't have like a ton of spend ups here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you wanted to eliminate the 10K guys, which I'm not going to, but if you wanted to do that, that's
there's
fine.
Only two
also,
of them anyway.
You're gonna find What's that?
And there's only two 10K guys anyway.
There's only two. So we're gonna start off just with that as a very basic one. Excuse me. Kenny, what are you seeing? Which one of these two do you prefer? I do think that the ownership for Saber Sim is a little low on Henley. I think he'll be a little more popular than that. But where do you stand with Henley and Lowry?
I think they're both going to be around the same percent owned. I do see Saber Sim has Henley lower, but I don't agree with that. I think they'll both come in definitely over 20%. I see him as high as approaching 30 in some places. But here's the thing: Russell Henley. I don't like him as much as Shane Lowry this week. I've always been a Shane Lowry guy. I've always liked Shane Lowry. I play him often. I think, it's interesting that the pricing is what it is. I don't even understand really why it is that way, because Shane Lowry's had a really great. I mean, I guess he got cut at the Farmers, but we know there was like crazy win and stuff, whatever. But
Yeah.
So I don't really understand why Shane's not at the top. I mean, if I had to pick a guy, it's definitely going to be Shane. I also think that there's a pretty good case to just not even worry about playing them at all. I think that there's a lot of value down in deep into the 7K ranges and stuff like that. So I think it might be a good spot to just kind of get different if they're going to be the top two highest guys owned on the slate. Neither of them necessarily has to win. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to get a question in here right now from Deep Open. It's asking, do you feel like with optimizers and sims that most of the field are spraying and praying in multi-entry? I don't really. I mean, look, you're going to be spread out. Like, it's just that when there's not definitive, when there's no Scotty, first of all, in general, you're going to be a little more spread out. Like, it's just, you have sort of, look, and we don't play him every week. We try to find ways to fade and all these things. If you look at the number of times he's not necessarily even always the optimal, but in the winning lineup, he's in the winning lineup. Like, it's like 80-something% last year.
yeah, usually
third number. So it's not spraying and praying. I mean, if you have a decided take on, you think someone's way better than everybody else, go with it. That's there's definitely some edge to be gained. But I do think that these are extremely high variance. It's still golf no matter what. And they're high variance for even golf because we don't have these guys who stick out like crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. And there's, and being a weaker field event and still a full field event with a full legitimate cut and everything, who's to say, you only get 6 guys in a lineup, you know what I mean? And even if you're max entering something, you can't efficiently have exposure to everyone. You know what I mean? Like, it's just bad game theory. So, it's like, I think with the optimizers specifically, and actually Bobby and I were just talking about this before we started the show. It's my opinion that the optimizers are a lot of the value is in finding some of those spray guys that will pop up and stuff that you weren't aware of. And in kind of my approach
from last week.
Right. And kind of my approach is to like, okay, well, I'll just keep those guys and, rotate in and out the guys I know and I'm familiar with. And really, especially in, large max field event or tournaments, you kind of have to take some shots on stuff because there's you have to get away from the ownership. I mean, when there's contests that are 70,000 90,000 people, it's like there's just too you have to really kind of take some shots.
Yep, absolutely. For what it's worth, I like Lowry better than Henley. I'll get back to the original. I'm going to have exposure to both of them. There's just no, I mean, I see them as being very similar to the players in the 9K range, and I wouldn't make a difference to me. I would still have exposure to both of them. It's not going to change a bunch for me, but I'm not really worried about salary particularly. And it's not a tight fitting them in. Well, at least, you know what I mean? We don't have to worry about that part of things. So let's go to the 9K range. Talk about a couple of your favorite plays here, Kenny, because there's really only one guy that's going to be low owned. And just to give away mine, I think that he's the one I don't know if I'll have the most ownership of him, but I'll definitely be the biggest over the field on him, anybody in this range, and that would be Benny On. What do you like in this range?
Interesting. I like that you like Benny On. He's another one of those guys that I like pretty much all the time. He did well. He had a great season last season. I know his form hasn't been as great, this past few weeks or whatever, but I do, I kind of like the narrative of, maybe guys that haven't done well the past couple of weeks are going to bounce back in Florida. It's a completely different game of golf, different climate. They've been playing cold, hard putting golf. They're going to go to warm, easy putting golf. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So and Benny's kind of always been one of those guys, typically at the beginning of the season, I kind of have an idea of, oh, these are guys I think are going to have a shot at winning this season. I try to like kind of have exposure to them, even when they have an off week, like he just got cut at the Genesis. But I also like in the same vein, another guy who hasn't had as stellar of a necessarily start to the season, but I think has had success here before and is kind of doing well, is also Keith Mitchell, who I think is going to be also one of the lower owned guys in the 9K range. So I like both of those plays. I also like Minwoo Lee. I do think that this is going to be another driver advantage course, assuming you can keep it out of the water. But I don't think that he's had too many concerns recently with his. His obviously we know he bombs it. Sometimes he has accuracy problems, but he seems to have kind of cleaned some of that up. So I like him this week as well in this range.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I too like Minwoo. He's another one. I'll probably be the highest, over the field on. Actually, I don't know about that because I love Berger this week. Florida guy, back in Florida, playing well, all the things that line up. But I have to just point out that if this was just a blind whatever, and you just said, okay, who's the best golfers in this tournament, you probably could have a conversation between Sungjae, Lowry. I don't even know actually that Lowry would be. I actually think that Sungjae would be considered the best. I think that it's just been a little bit rockier than usual for him. I'm on Sungjae this week, so I'm on Sungjae, Berger, and I'm on Minwoo and Ben Eon as my favorites. Sepp Straka I like, but I just think that fading that ownership is probably a good idea. I think he ends up as the highest owned player on the slate. We'll see, but I'm going to have some of it. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't want to commit to a guy who's going to be 30% owned potentially. What do you think about some of that stuff?
Well, I think I think Sungjae is going to get a lot more ownership than we think too.
But I've been looking everywhere, and I can't find anybody who's projecting him too much above this ownership. That's the thing that's what keeps getting to me.
I mean, I see Rick has him at 26% currently.
That's possible. It's possible.
Which, and in his slate, in his projection, that would be the third highest on the slate after the two 10K guys. So I'm a little cautious on Sungjae, just specifically because of his recent form. And I think if he's gonna be over 20% owned, and he's the fourth most expensive guy on the slate, like I already mentioned, I have no problem skipping the first two just because of ownership and price anyway. He would be an easy one for me to skip. Especially when the spend up is less than 1,000 to get Shane, who I'd much prefer anyway. Sepp, I feel you on the ownership too. I kind of want to get away from that a little bit, but I do think that he's got a good shot at being in contention this week. So I'm not going to really try to fade him necessarily. With Berger, it's interesting. I've heard a lot of people this week in some other podcasts I've listened to go to Berger, and I don't know. To me, it feels like a trap. It just feels
I hear you a little bit with that, right? Like this is a guy who we weren't playing at 6,800 a couple weeks ago. I know he's a poor guy. We weren't playing him at his home, like literally where he lives.
Right. Yeah, it feels like a trap to me. It feels like, I don't know. I'm not going to be over the way on the field with him. I don't, I'm not going to be. Probably not going to be putting him into any single entries. So yeah, I'm cautious about him. We'll see what happens.
All right. So I that makes sense. It's interesting because I had that feeling, but I particularly like him. And I think if he's back, he's in the.
If he's back, then I'll be wrong this week.
And he's right. Exactly. That's fine too. I mean, you got to play some variance in this. So I'll start off the 8K range real quick and just go through these guys. I'll be under on Davis Thompson. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have some. I'm also very confused I've seen looked at a lot of different sites, and it's very confusing to try and get the ownership right here. I am, as you know about me, I'm willing to take chances on young guys. I'm also willing to take chances at guys who were once great and are sort of kind of maybe are struggling, but maybe are finding some things. They just can't seem to put together 4 good rounds. And that's Cam Young, who should actually be made for this type of course. I will be overweight the Cam Young. I completely understand anybody who's concerned about it, but I like the idea of taking a gamble on that one. He's getting some ownership, but it's another one that if this was last year or whatever, early in the year last year, he wasn't, not that he was playing great early in the year, just would have generally been in the same sentence as Sungjae or ahead of him. Probably he might have been the most expensive player in this field. I think that's somebody I don't mind going towards. I'll be underweight. I'll probably be right around 8 or 9% on Gracerman. I'm sort of wishy-washy on that one, maybe even a little lower, because I actually have some interest in gambling on Spieth this year, just because I'm one of the lower owned plays in the range. We know he's played every course and has had good success and nightmares everywhere. I just like the gamble because of the low ownership. The other ones who I'm high on here, even with the chalkiness and after struggling, I like Kitayama quite a bit this week. I also want to go back that Austin Eckroat might be struggling right now, but he won this tournament last year. And I am not going to ignore that. So I will definitely be double-digit ownership on Eckroat. Not sure exactly where it ends up. And then Novak would be the next one for me. I'm lower on Kim. I'm lower on Rogers. I'm lower on, and I'm probably maybe just above the field on Ben Griffin. So I think I'm going to end up with less of the 210K guys and being a lot of my guys coming from this 9 and 8K range. What are you doing here?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree on that. My initial kind of hand builds looking at the slate when ownership came out initially yesterday kind of focused on that, basically, starting at at the 8K range. So I'm with you a little bit. I totally hear what you're saying with Cam Young. I understand that there's a concern. It seems odd to me that he isn't projected to be higher owned. One of the other things I was going to mention earlier that I forgot was regarding the projected ownerships and what kind of ownership you look like and stuff. And I've heard Sheets say before, that basically the more data inputs you get into ownership, the better. And it doesn't necessarily work the same with like points projections, but that's one of the things I like that he does specifically for golf. What Sheets does is he does the look backs right after slate's lock, and he shows the biggest miss in his projection versus what actually happened. And I feel like this week Cam Young's going to be at the top of that list. But I think also, I hear what you're saying with Jordan Spieth. If we go back to 5 minutes ago talking about who's potentially the best player in the field here. There's definitely Jordan Spieth. If he's not an all-time best player in this field, then you're probably wrong. He's got more career accolades than anyone in the field.
More than all combined, probably.
Yeah. I know he's hot and cold. He's all over the place. The one reason I would be concerned about Jordan this week wouldn't necessarily because of his hot and cold and he just missed a cut or whatever and yada yada. It would be more just because he basically just committed to this last week.
Yep.
And I think for him it's like warm up. Like he's trying to get ready for the Masters.
My fear. That's what I think the field fears as well, and that's what he's getting the low ownership from too.
And but if that gives him low ownership, then good. But I just don't I see places where he's 17, 18, 19% projected ownership too. So I'm a little afraid of that because I think if he comes out and has a hot day one, then watch out. But if he comes out and has the first 9 holes go poorly, he's just going to be taking practice shape shot swings. You know what I mean? He's going to dump them into the water, and then in that case for $8,600 when he's potentially maybe 18% owned or something like that, that's a skip for me. So I'm probably going to be not targeting him specifically in the range, the 8K range, the specific. My favorite 2 plays are alongside with you, Ben Griffin, who I think is just picking up more and more steam. I expect a great week out of him this week. He's played here past couple of years, so he's at least familiar with the course and stuff. He's in much better form than he's ever been. So I like him, and I'm going to be over the field on him no matter where the ownership ends up. And my other one is right there just below him, Michael Kim, who I have the exact same feelings about, better form than he's ever been. He recently just did some, lessons on his short game, and it's massively improved it. This is going to be, Florida golf short game comes into play often. The putting is going to be, not as much of a mix if, he's hitting it like he's been doing. His approach has been great. His off the tee is great. His distance is great. His accuracy is great. So Michael Kim's going to be, and he's going to be probably one of my, guys that I invest heavily most into actually in terms of cost of lineups as well this week. So those are my my
people aren't going to do it because the perception is California guy, California golfer, they're going to Florida now. So, and it's just these narratives drive so much in golf, and I just often wonder, God, how much of this is even real? You know what I mean? If they're still playing golf, these guys aren't idiots. They have teams, they have people around them telling them how to do it. Yeah, it's true for some guys. You want to weight it, but if everybody's going one way, I just think you got to find those little zags. So I like the idea that you're taking the what I'm taking on Spieth and Cam Young, although we'll see how he ends up ownership. you're taking that chance on Michael Kim.
Yep.
Any thoughts on Eckroat before we move down to the next tier?
I get it. He won last year. He's just been so trash this season that I'm probably just going to X him out of Sabres. You know what I mean? Like
there you go. That's a take. Hey, somebody's got to win, right? One of us are gonna have a chance there.
Right.
All right, 7,500 to 7,900. What do you like in this tier?
Okay, so this tier, I actually don't like as much as the next one. Just because I think that there's a lot more value, for $500 less. But, for me, it's probably, I'm probably going to be going back to Lucas Glover this week. He's also, he's one of those guys. I remember, what was it, 2 seasons ago? Yeah. He's one of those guys that does great in hot weather. And this is one of the narratives that I kind of think about. Like, I don't think the weather's going to come into play with wind or rain. Like, maybe there'll be some rain, but we've been to Florida. It's going to be hot and humid. And it's going to, if you've been, we both are Californians and live here currently. When you go to Florida, it's a different kind of thing. And especially, if you're acclimated to, a colder, temperate climate, and you go to a real humid, tropical climate, that can affect things. But I know Lucas Glover is one of those guys that he'll sweat his ass off and play the best round of golf he's ever had. So I kind of like that for him too, just going, also off his recent form, even going back to, he's had a couple missed cuts or whatever, but he's also, had he contended at Pebble Beach. He's had a pretty good start to the season, and he's also, rates out fairly well. He's one of the most accurate, ball strikers on the slate. So, when it comes to desert golf versus Florida golf, it's one thing hitting out a native area. You can't hit it out of the water. So,
right.
I like guys that also tend to be a lot more accurate in this range, just because you don't get a lot of the bombers down here. And you don't get a lot of the guys that are like super great on approach. But when it does come to approach, Glover is, he's the highest rated in strokes gained approach in the 79 to 7,500 range, right under JJ Spawn, who I also think I'll have some interest in this week, especially just because, he's had also a great season. He's super accurate as well. And he's also one of the longer guys in the range off the tee. And then my last one here in the range will be again, going back to the past couple of seasons I've been on, or the past couple of weeks rather, I've been on to Taylor Moore. And he's been playing some really great golf as well. Also super long and accurate off the tee, and a great short game. So I'll probably be pretty heavy on Taylor Moore as well.
Yeah, I run into this problem all the time in everything with DFS, where like, if I'm on a guy like way before they start hitting their stride, and then when they hit their stride, I just like want to jump off because everybody else is on them. That's my fear with the Taylor Moore thing. I keep trying not to play him because I'm like, I was playing him at 1%, and all these things against like a year ago, and sometimes it works. But anyway, my highest owned is going to be Alex Smalley from this range. I know he's going to have some ownership. I'm happy to. I just think he's playing great. I'm going to keep rolling with it. Luke Clanton will get his card or whatever if he makes the cut. I think he does make the cut. I have some interest in him. I'm probably going to be. I currently am under on Spawn. You're giving me some reason to rethink it. And again, another guy I'm willing to ignore some recent trends is Billy Horschel, a guy we like to play in Florida in general, and not somebody who I've been high on so far. But I think this is when he turns it around and he starts playing well. So Billy Horschel, Alex Smalley at the top of that range. And then I'm pretty spread out. I'm going to be under on Harmon. I'm probably going to be a little bit under on Fowler, although I like him better than I usually do. But I guess Clanton would be the next one for me. But I like your Glover idea, especially at low ownership. Going down to this next range, obviously, we have no Lee Hodges, who I was oddly going to play a bunch of, so can't do that anymore. Who do you like, 7K to 7,400?
So I think this is where it gets real interesting, because there's a lot of guys that rate out well. There's a few guys in this range that have like really good history here. And, a lot of these guys have also like had pretty solid seasons. Speaking of Jake Knapp for example.
Yep.
Also, projected to be one of the lowest owned guys in the range, in possibly even on the slate. And I think that's just because he doesn't rate out super well for the type of course, but he's been playing great golf. He T4'd here last year, like right after he had just won. So, I'm probably going to go kind of pretty heavy on him. I also really like Nikolai Højgaard this week, who's just been, had a great week last week, had a decent week at the WM. And he, kind of going back and forth, playing the tug of war with him and his brother, who's better. But, I really like Højgaard also this week. And then, I think I'm gonna probably go for it a little bit with Chris Kirk, who also has had a great history here, played a bunch, won it a couple of years ago. I think he's not had the greatest start to the season. And I think because of that, people are going to kind of be off of him. So I think he's a little bit of a sneaky play that, if he gets off to a good start, could have a good chance. And then my last real target here will be Ryan Gerard, who also has just had a really solid season. I think he's going to, have a much better chance this week against a weaker field. And he's a scorer. So
yeah, I think I actually put him. Yeah, I set my early min maxes. I go through it all obviously again, but I had Ryan Gerard. Was one of the guys who I had as I want to make sure I start my minimum as above the field, because at least what we think the field is going to be. Because I agree with that take about Gerard quite a bit. So starting off, I do like Gerard. I love Højgaard. I understand there's variance and guys haven't played courses as much. I think there's an argument that Højgaard could easily be 9,500 in this field. I really do. I don't entirely understand why he's as cheap as he is, but I'm in on it. I think you could say similar things about Harry Hall, but I personally am underweight Harry Hall at the moment. I'm underweight Bo Hostler, not by much, pretty much close to the field. Pretty close to the field on both of them, to be honest with you. Bud Cauley, I'm not getting to. I'm just sort of going through each one and sort of saying over under. I'll be slightly above on Seamus Power. Norgard Muller, probably near the field. Echeverria, I'll be above the field. And Gerard is, though, a target for me, as is Jake Knapp. I like the idea of just taking advantage of this Jake Knapp low ownership. I really think that it's too low. And I like what you said about Chris Kirk. Sort of talked me back into him a little bit, because I was sort of thinking the same thing as you. And it just feels better when you hear someone else say it out loud. Olesen, CTP, I'm pretty much under on all these guys, or just not getting to much of them, but neither is anyone else. So there is some value in at least getting some exposure to each of these really low-owned guys. And one who has not played well, who looks bad and everything, super cheap. Again, you could say a year ago could have easily been 9,500 in this range and popular, Tom Hoagie. I don't know where I'm going to end up on it, but it certainly is going to be above the 2% that he's getting ownership. And the other ones for me would be, look, I think Joel Dahman is a better golfer than he realizes he is. And the one thing I'll say about Joel Dahman, you know what you couldn't do last week? You couldn't win a tournament without him. There was no way to win a tournament without Joel Dahman last week. So maybe we can get another repeat performance at 7K. I'll gamble on the Joel Dahman. So that is definitely the lower owned. This is like the lower owned tier. And I think that there is some value of maybe foregoing some of what we think is safety in the 75 to 7,900 and maybe dropping down to this lower 7K range just based on ownership alone from a game theory perspective.
Yep. Oh, one other guy that I forgot to mention down here that I'm going to be back to this week, because I'm kind of on him for the season, is Sam Ryder, who actually is, he's been playing some decent golf. He's made a bunch of cuts, done fine. He's got good history here as well, including a couple of top 10s in 22, 2021. So Sam Ryder's another one in this range that I'll be kind of isolating a bit.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll go first on this one. I'll let you close it out under 7K. All right. So I have a little bit of exposure of basically all these guys. Not all these guys, all the guys you're seeing pictured. Putnam probably get the 2% of basically most of these guys. I'm interested a little bit more in the Svensons, but the one I really want to be well overweight on is Chris Ventura. I think this guy's actually really talented. I'd like to be that would be the targeted play for me down here. Thor Bjornsson would be the next one in the higher end of this range. After that, it gets a little bit more shaky, and I'm not especially interested. And you don't really need the 6K range, which again means it gets completely overlooked. I have a little bit of Frankie Sappin at 0 ownership. I have a little bit of Norlander at 0 ownership. I think the Rico Hui at 0 no ownership and Matt McCarty at no ownership are somewhat interesting. Carson Young, after he let everyone down, I didn't get him in my last builds. I'm actually going to make sure just I have some percentage of him because I actually think that he's a better golfer. He had a terrible start last week. I'm willing to forgive it. Everything else is out the window when you make what did he make, an 11 on the fourth hole of the day? Really hard to come back from that. And that is, especially when you bogey the next two.
Ruined my main single entry too.
Oh man, I was with you. I had a bunch of them. And by the way, he went from being like super popular at 7,800 on a tougher field, or the same type of field, I should say, to now being under 6K, under 6,500 and 0 ownership. I'll gamble. Other than that, just getting a couple percentages of Pavon, Ramey, and Kazire, who felt the need to bogey the last 2 holes to miss the cut on the number, which pissed me off because he was my big stand last week. I actually played like 24% of them, so
wow.
I went for taking a shot. Sheets bet him outright to win the tournament last week.
Oh my goodness.
So we were trying to take some gambles. So nothing naturally is going to get you down to these guys. I'm just saying, look, even if you're clicking the minimum 1% on some of these guys, I just think it's good to get a little bit different and maybe force a little bit of these super low owned plays in. We've seen them pay off already this season. We see them pay off every year. So I always try and get a little bit more spread out gambling in the under 7K range. What do you like down here, Kenny?
I like it. So yeah, I have a couple interesting ones. If you want to talk about super low ownership projected, probably the lowest projected that I like down here will be Bryce Garnett.
Okay.
Who actually, has made most of the cuts this season. Well, he's made every cut he's played this year, and actually has, he's played this course a few. He didn't play last year, but he played, the prior handful of years. Had a couple, had a T11, had some top 20 and stuff like that. So he's got some good course history here. I think he's going to also, just be really. I don't think anyone's going to have him.
No.
Another guy right down there that I like this week, again, going back to, is Ben Coles, who I know, a lot of people have been on recently, but it seems like he's just, I didn't hear his name once this week so far. Then another kind of odd play that I'm going to try to sneak in there a little bit is Ricky Castillo.
Ooh, okay.
Who's actually like super long off the tee and accurate. And has also been, putting up some cuts at the, harder field events this season. And then also just to back you up, I do like Chris Ventura this week. He was also kind of one of my stars down in the range initially in my first stuff on Monday. And then I also just like the top 2 guys in the range, in Adam Svensson and Andrew Putnam. This week, probably a little heavier on Andrew Putnam just because his recent form's been a little bit better. Yeah. But both guys are super accurate, have decent, across the board stat profiles, and just I think lower owned than they are typically should be, and also lower priced than both of them should typically be.
Agreed on all that. I like the Putnam idea. I actually played a bunch of him last week as well. All right. Somehow I salvaged last week. It was really weird. Like, it was every week where I get the worst first day, it's like everything goes well for me, or at least well enough, not as well as the week before, but like, it was really weird. Like, I was like, how did I like not barely lose money when I thought I was going to lose like 95% of my entries? And just some things got there for me at the end. And I didn't have either of the 2 guys in the playoff either, but and I made a nice 3x my money on the showdown. I played only one slow showdown. It was a Sunday slate. And it worked out really, really well.
Oh, nice.
All right, Kenny. Here we're going to play the game. Who is going to win this tournament? It's a tough one. It's a tough one to know.
I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Min Woo Lee.
Okay, I love it because he was going to be I was going to use him later in this. Min Woo Lee. All right, I am going to piss you off, and no, I'm just kidding. I'm going to say Daniel Berger. Maybe a win is asking too much, but I like Burger here a lot. I'm gonna commit to these things that I believe in, and so I guess I'm going with Burger. For what it's worth, I've had 2 missed cuts already for guys I picked to win tournaments, and I wouldn't be shocked if it happened again. But I do think this is where Burger comes through, and I am going to say Daniel Burger, even though I feel a little sick to my stomach when I say it. Also, I despise the guy as a human being, so I just happen to like him as a golfer. Anyway, all right, we can move on to the next So basically anybody under 10K who's going to finish in the top 5.
I'm gonna go with Keith Mitchell there.
Okay, we're gonna have some interesting stuff here. All right, I like. There's a number of guys I went through when I really thought about this, and I am going to. I was going to go with Minwoo for this, so I'm trying to think who I'm going to go to next. I think I'm going to take a gamble here and say the guy who always comes runner-up, although not anytime recently. You know what? The right answer is probably Ben Griffin. F it. I can use the other guy for my top 10. All right. Now under 9K, top 10.
For me, that's going to be Michael Kim.
Michael Kim. I love it. It's getting off the board. I am going to say I'm actually jumping back up in price, but it's still under 9K. I'm going to say Cam Young. We're going a little gambly, but I think we should be gambling in these kind of tournaments.
Yeah, totally.
Avoiding so under 8K, top 20.
Under 8K to top 20. I'm Taylor Moore.
Okay, so we got Taylor Moore. And I am going to say Alex Smalley.
I like that, actually.
And then we have the under 7K to make the cut.
Under 7K.
Or if you want to say the best to make the cut, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Putnam.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go with Chris Ventura. So, and then we have one more. Sheets' favorite one. I don't know why. He's Mr. Nice Guy, always likes all the positive things, but he loves to zag, man. He wants to. He loves to find the guy who's going to have a blow up. Who is not going to make the cut above 9K?
Okay.
We didn't mention Taylor Pendrith, by the way. I really like Taylor Pendrith this week. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I do too. Okay. Over 9K to miss the cut. I'm going to say Denny McCarthy.
Ooh, interesting. That's an interesting one because that's a cut maker guy. But I guess these guys all are, so it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason.
Yeah.
He just hasn't. He hasn't made the cut here in the past 2 years. So
yeah, I'm gonna be, and also like I just realized now, like I Sung Jae, Berger, Pendrith, I have interest in all those guys, so I'm gonna end up somehow overweight on all of them, which means I'm probably playing them together and probably throwing some 6K bum in there with them. I'm going to say over 9K just because this is what Sheets does to me all the time. I'm going to say Keith Mitchell. Just because I have to honor Sheets since he's out today. So,
okay.
All right. Well, it should be fun, man. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I will post all my golf content a little later today once I have my stuff really settled. And it should be a fun week. Let's make some money. What's the next elevated event, Kenny's coming up? There's
next
one more
week
before the Masters, right?
Yeah. It's the hold on, I'm bringing it up real quick.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to figure it out because that's when the
the API Arnold Palmer is next week.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to it. Looking forward to a good golf season. Kenny, thanks so much for joining us. Great stuff as always.
Thank you.
And guys, we'll see you in the Discord. And remember to like and subscribe. And remember, we've got some great packages out there right now. Sheets is literally just dismantling the entire NBA, and he's doing it with one lineup or 50 in the lottery, one lineup in the big one, and he just keeps winning every night. I think it's a great time to come and join us. We've been really, really, really hot so far this year. We've got all of SaberSim's content, all of SaberSim's projections and builder combined with all of my content, all of Sheets' content, all of Sheets' content and his projections, all of Goldie's projections. Brandon Cruz for NASCAR. We've got Adam Perry doing the NHL. So a lot of great stuff going on, and we are developing some new tools that you will be grandfathered into. So if you want to sign up, you're going to be able to do it cheaper now than you will be in the very near future. So keep that in mind. And as always, appreciate you guys. Hit the like button on your way out of here, and let's make some money this week.